Good evening, everyone. My name is Marlene Olsavsky. I'm the Senior Vice President for International Higher Education at Pearson. I'm joining you this evening from Toronto, Ontario in Canada, where I am currently working and living in my home office. I'm delighted to be joined by Jacky Wright, Chief Digital Officer and Corporate Vice President at Microsoft. Jacky Wright is a transformational global leader, an innovative technologist, and a recognized STEM advocate. She's a senior executive whose extensive career spans multiple industries. As Chief Digital Officer and Corporate Vice President of Microsoft in the United States, Jacky inspires and leads teams to drive innovation, adopt sustainable and accessible business models, and digitally transform their practices. Welcome, Jacky. It's so lovely to meet you and an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for carving time out of your very busy schedule to share some of your insights around innovation at Pearson's inaugural HE Innovative Teaching and Learning Student Support Awards. I also want to take, thank you, Jacky. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome all of our audience members, thank them for being innovators, and wish the nominees best of luck. And finally, I do want to thank the Pearson team in the UK who launched these important awards in recognition of innovation. And who organized tonight's event. So I know we only have a limited amount of time, so why don't we just dive right into some of the questions. Jacky, with emerging technology, a changing landscape in higher education, and the recent impact from COVID-19, it's been a period like we've never seen before. What are some of the education innovations that you've seen over the past years that have excited you most?
And Marlene, thank you all for having me. I'm really excited and looking forward to the conversation. You know, this has really been a tremendously challenging time for all, but especially for education. So, you know, I really wanted to just start out by just simply thanking all of you for your creativity, resilience over the past year. I mean, to really maintain academic standards and really deliver student-centered learning while keeping both students and staff safe. You know, I know it hasn't been easy. So I really, really want to applaud you. You know, this pace and scale of transformation with technology at the core in response to this pandemic, you know, it's just been really phenomenal. I've been excited by the many ways universities have used technology to augment the learning experience for educators and students alike. And there are some technology highlights that really, really stand out. When you think about 5G, what it has enabled is learning anywhere, anytime. And, you know, we can get into digital exclusion and how we really focus on that. But if you just take that at the core, this notion of creating digital platforms and learning anywhere, anytime, that is really transformational in itself. Learning consortia and coalitions are taking shape with diverse stakeholders, including governments, publishers, education professionals, technology providers, and telecom network operators, as I've indicated, just coming together to utilize these platforms as temporary solutions to the crisis, making education more accessible, and, you know, just really hope as it does, reaching out into under-resourced areas. I think I've seen data being used to really highlight and think about what are the digital barriers for having people access education, and how can we ensure that everyone is utilizing and able to access. And there was one in Lebanon that was really interesting that really focused on, you think about physical education, having the children create videos and uploading the videos to help others think about, you know, physical education. I thought that was quite innovative. And then this Read Together. I mean, Read Together has really taken off globally in terms of creating a platform where you can engage everyone to read together. So, you know, I think those are a few things that I think have really, really helped us in this challenging time.
Those are great observations, Jacky. The other question I have here is, you know, the academics who've been shortlisted for these awards are innovators in their institutions. Some of their projects are still in their infancy and maturing, others are more established. And we know that can be difficult against the backdrop of working in a not-for-profit sometimes. What advice can you give to these academics to help them move their projects further along and to keep innovating?
Yeah, I touched on this notion of collaborating, this ecosystem. No one of us, each one of us, none of us have the answers to every challenge. So we really do need to collaborate to achieve the outcomes we want. So I would encourage you to collaborate across industry, departments, universities, you name it. There's public and private sector, and harnessing the power of that. I think those are really ways that we can really come together to really collaborate to solve these problems. The second is harnessing data to optimize your effectiveness, better understand your progress, pivot where you need it, really transform your outcomes so you can scale the impact of your project or program, and using those insights to then iterate in an agile way. Those are just two things that come to mind for me.
Great. With the shift with COVID and with the digital transformation, we're also seeing in higher education, we're also seeing a major shift in student demographics. How do you think educators and institutions should be thinking about creating more access to support, equity, and inclusion for future learners in their classrooms?
Yeah, a really important point, Marlene. I do think we need to be mindful first of how we define student. That definition is expanding as you think about learners of all kinds, people seeking out new skills for success in this digital economy. You can be fluid, very fluid and virtual as you think about the definition of a student. We're also seeing more diverse groups gain access to higher education for the first time. So in places like the US, the National Center for Education Statistics snapshot of American undergraduates show that nearly 74% of students represent more than non-traditional backgrounds. 25% are single parents, 20% are over the age of 25, and 50% are financially independent. And we're seeing this trend around the globe. So this requires institutions, in my mind, to really rethink the kinds of services and support that they offer to address these unique needs. Things like these wraparound services such as childcare for student parents, after-hours tutoring, access to collaboration tools, wellness and mental health resources, and then, career services for students with disabilities, just to name a few. I also think there's this issue of accessibility and really thinking about how we move beyond the Disability Resource Office to really how we use technology to integrate accessibility into all facets of the education experience, from the devices, the platforms used in the classroom, to course formats, to campus activities and events. I want to highlight one experience that I've seen in terms of an educator using data to really understand the demographics in their local community to then highlight the potential barriers in that community. And then how do we then augment what those barriers are to really make sure that the learning experience can exist. And then lastly, we have to think about the kind of culture we're creating for students and staff. Are our academic institutions truly inclusive places for the various kinds of learners enrolling? I mean, we can't really innovate without diversity, and that starts with really engendering the right culture. So for me, where you harness the power of everyone and empower them to do their best work, that's when you truly get the power of innovation. I mean, those are just some of the things that I think institutions should be mindful of as we're really thinking about creating more access for future learners.
Yeah, those are all great points, and none of them are easy to solve for. And I know as a learning company, we've been working directly with institutions, with students, with with governments to figure out how can we make education more affordable and accessible. Thanks so much for answering that. Another question I have here is about innovation and requiring us to not only think differently, but to take risks. As our awardees have demonstrated, it also requires us to think about how the nature of work is changing. There are many rewards of upskilling and reskilling through education. How do you see academic institutions and enterprise working together to address and close the growing skills gap?
Yeah, this has been a burning issue and platform for many organizations and corporations. And, Microsoft, we also recognize the need to work with academia, private and public institutions. So while changes, in technology are just really reshaping workforce expectations, they also give institutions tremendous opportunity to adapt and push innovation forward. And again, in partnership with public and private sector. And so for us as Microsoft, as a technology company, we understand the importance of really investing in skills development to ensure equitable participation in what is, we all believe is an increasingly digital society. In response to the pandemic, we launched this Global Skills Initiative that really brings together a coalition of civic, learning, and corporate partners to help skill and reskill the workforce. We've established specific partnerships with various universities to support the innovative technologies and research in such things as mixed reality, AI, cloud computing, and IoT, and then really partnering with our corporate partners to commit to hiring these learners that we've really focused on really skilling. I mean, this whole notion of this ecosystem and the ability to remove the digital exclusion barriers, increase digital skilling, especially in underserved communities, and holding our private sector as accountable as the public and academia. I think this is the secret sauce to really changing the landscape in terms of digital inclusion and making sure that we're closing the skills gap.
Right. I think Microsoft has done some really outstanding work in this area. And I know we at Pearson are looking at the work that you've done, and as well as other companies. I have one final question for you, because I know our audience members are going to be moving on to their next awards agenda item. My final question is, let me frame it. There's a greater sense of urgency to plan for teaching and learning of tomorrow with the recent shifts that we're seeing in education. Based on what you've experienced and seen, Jacky, how is short-term planning and long-term strategic vision changing in response to some of those innovations?
Marlene, I think it's an interesting question. And I think the whole notion of, what this pandemic has done has really turned upside down how you think about planning. And so you need to think about what are these existential risks that are inhibiting or may inhibit our ability to provide services, to educate, and how can we really innovate for that? And so this notion of short-term and long-term planning, with really focusing on what are those existential risks that we see in society, that is the new way of really focusing on how to innovate. And whether you're in education, whether you're in manufacturing, healthcare, the uber point is we have threats that come at us that we've never imagined. We have to ensure that people are not digitally excluded, and we have to understand the impact in those underrepresented communities and how we can overcome them. And that needs to be embedded in our short-term planning and our long-term planning. I wanted to just congratulate all the awardees for everything that they're doing and just really to continue the great work.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacky, for those inspiring insights. And I think all of our audience members here tonight can take away some of what you shared and apply it to their own work. I've been starting to think about how I can apply some of your insights to my work too here at Pearson. So thank you so very much. Have a great evening, and good luck to all of our award nominees.
Thank you.